Ariel, Israel has long argued that Hamas embeds itself within civilian populations, densely populated areas. What is this latest footage showing?
Right, so not only do they embed themselves within civilian population, which according to international law is considered a war crime, but from that civilian population, from those areas, that's where they conduct their activity, which is another war crime according to international law. But what this all comes as part of a large, one can say, trove of footage that the IDF has released today, giving examples of how Hamas is placing its infrastructure in factories, schools, mosques, hospitals, nearby, not per se inside them, to make those targets unable, or to make the IDF more limited in what it can strike, because obviously those are targets that are considered sensitive and that it is not allowed to strike according to international law. Now, I'll give you one example of a video, drone footage that the IDF released today of what the military claims to be a route of a tunnel, an underground tunnel, placed near a Pepsi factory and a UN school in Jabalia in the northern part of the Gaza Strip. Now, in the video, this factory employs 200 workers, and in the video you can see what is believed to be the entrance to the tunnel with a Hamas flag, as well as a cement factory placed nearby where they build the arcs that are used to build the tunnel. We can see the arcs themselves. That's the Hamas flag that I mentioned. That's the entrance to the cement factory. What we're seeing right now on the screen, that's a suspected Hamas operative. Now, this tunnel that the military claims to be there is just part of a large network of underground tunnels that the Israeli military says during last year's war in Gaza, they destroyed roughly 60 miles of these underground tunnels. And it comes as this, according to Israeli officials, this has been perhaps the calmest year in a decade in violence from Gaza following last year's war. And defense officials, IDF officials, are saying today that the damage that Hamas suffered in that war, guardian of the walls, alongside the improvement of civil conditions, that Israel has taken a large amount of measures to improve the situation of the civilian population in Gaza. Both of these together have deterred the terror organization from attacking Israel and flaring up the situation on the border.
I want to unpack a little bit more about what you're describing, this concept of rockets being sent from close to civilian areas, schools, hospitals, mosques, as this footage is showing, and the fact that the IDF would then respond to those particular sites. How is it possible technologically to have that precision to target back at where the rocket is emanating and not hitting these civilian areas? This is part of the complex nature of this war.
Definitely, and in fact, Israeli military officials say that Hamas purposefully places their targets in the vicinity of these sensitive sites. I'll give another example. For instance, a weapons storage facility located 30 meters from a mosque and 40 meters from a UN medical clinic. Now, these Hamas, they store they have other storage facilities on rooftops of residents of operatives. Now, this makes it very, very challenging for the Israeli military to target these, and a lot of these targets aren't struck because of this sensitivity. Each target undergoes legal debate to see whether it is worth it or not. Some targets that were struck are debatable whether it was necessary or not. There were 9 towers, multi-story towers, that were targeted during the last year's operation. The military says that those held strategic threats to Israel. One of them, if we talk about the famous tower housing the AP offices and Al Jazeera. So according to the military, that building housed technology that disrupted Israeli interception technology, and that was what prompted that strike. if we look at all this in a larger context, this definitely shows the complexity of the threat that Israel has to deal with in the Gaza Strip, a place that has been de facto under military rule since 2007, a territory that, unlike the West Bank, is not governed by the Palestinian Authority, the internationally recognized leadership of the Palestinians, but rather by a Hamas terror organization. And all this makes it all the more difficult for ensuring a horizon of, on the one hand, prosperity for the Gazans, and on the other, security for Israelis, not only living around the Gaza Strip in Israel's southern towns, but the last conflict, rockets reached Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, and so this whole situation is very, very complicated, and that's what the Israeli military tried to illustrate today with sharing these unseen before footage.
It certainly will be interesting to see if human rights organizations will be responding when they see this exact footage that you have shown us right now. Middle East correspondent Ariel Oseran, always appreciate your updates and your insight.